If you're after a small family car, should you go for a Volkswagen Golf, a Ford Focus, the new Vauxhall Astra, or should you forget about these European models and instead go for something Japanese, the Honda Civic? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Buy, sell,
Car wow.
Let's start off by talking about money and how much these cars cost, because that really does matter with these kind of vehicles. So this is the starting price of each of these cars. This is the price of the cars I've actually got on test here. And this is the average saving of each of these models through CarWow. Now, if you are thinking about buying a new car, click on the pop-out banner up there or follow the link in the description below to go to CarWow. You can compare cars, check out all the latest deals, dead simple. If you want to do that at a later date, just simply Google "Help Me CarWow" and me and my team will help you choose the right car for you and get it for a fair price from one of our trusted dealers. But while we're talking about fair prices, which of these cars has the fairest looks? Design's really important on a car, even for a normal family hatchback. And I think Vauxhall have done a great job with this latest Astra. It's got a good nose on it, the side profile's nice as well, and the rear end is mwah. I wouldn't have it in this grey colour, it's just a little bit dull. No, it's not dull, it just doesn't do the car justice. Get a bright colour, it looks wicked then. Though it's not my favourite in terms of design. You see, Honda has done an even better job with the new Civic. The previous generation car was a bit of a mess, but this one, it's just right. Pretty much every angle. Nice front, nice rear, but the side profile is the best bit. It's got a fastback design rather than being a boxy hatchback like its competitors. Smart. The Golf is a smart looking car from almost every angle apart from the front. What did they do with the front of this car? It's like it's melted. It's not the worst looking car here though. Finally, we come to the Focus, and I've got to say, it is the least attractive of all the four cars. Ford has actually updated it as part of a midlife facelift, but really all they've done is move the location of the badge from the bonnet to the grille. They should have done more because it's just a bit meh. Maybe they improve the interior. Here on the inside, the Focus is pretty nice. So the design, it's starting to look its age now, but it's still acceptable and quality is pretty good. So squidgy materials there and there, soft here, soft there. And let's do the old indicator test. What does the stalk feel like? Oh, nicely damped. And now let's move on to the glove box test. Oh, nicely damped as well. However, we're going to do a center console test and a little bit of wobblage, but not too bad. Seating position is good as well. The Focus has always had a great driving position. Also, this particular car, I should point out, has a smaller screen. As part of a recent facelift, you now get a much bigger screen. One of the downsides of the bigger screen is that you now have to operate the climate control through that big screen. But if you have the smaller screen, then you have some physical climate control buttons, which are actually easy to operate when you're driving. Downside is that you have a quite old-fashioned instrument binnacle with analog dials and a small digital screen there. However, if you do have the bigger infotainment system, you also get full digital dials. Jumping into the Golf, I think the design is just much nicer than the Focus. It does help this one has the two-tone interior, which lifts it even more. Quality-wise, well, squidgier dash, yeah, but that scratchy plastic there, whereas it's squidgy on the Focus. Door tops are similar to the Focus, really. Let's do the other quality test. So, the indicator. Ooh, that feels a bit more flimsy than the Focus. What about the glove box? That's better damped. That feels more expensive. Center console test. That's more solid. One thing I don't like so much though is the infotainment system. Believe it or not, this more modern infotainment system in the Golf isn't as good as the older one in the Focus, and it's certainly not as good as the updated one in the Focus. Part of the reason is it's just a bit buggy and awkward to use, and it's laggy. I also don't like the fact you have this horrible slider for the volume control for the stereo. Then to operate the climate control, you have these other sliders here, and they're not backlit, so you can't see them at night. And if you really want to get into the depths of the climate menu, you have to press this button here, then mess around with all the different things like your fan speed and stuff like that. It's not ideal. Digital driver's display, it's better than the one that you've got in that particular Focus, but overall, you know, it's like the one that you get in the upgraded system with the Focus. It's good enough, and you can scroll through different views and look at different information. That's all fine. Driving position, once again, really nice like in the Focus. Maybe not quite as sporty, but the steering wheel feels more expensive, and generally overall this is just a nicer place to be. Jumping into the Astra after the Golf, it's very nice to have some physical climate control buttons, and they're nicely laid out and easy to get to as well. If you look at the screen design, it's quite similar to the Golf's in a way. The graphics are a bit darker though. I don't think the system is quite as intuitive. but there's not that much in it really. Digital driver's display there. Once again, the graphics are a little bit on the dark side, and while you can actually customize the display, bizarrely you can't do it by pressing a button on the steering wheel, which is what you should be able to do. Instead you have to go into the main infotainment screen and do it that way, which is just bizarre. What's also quite bizarre is the amount of like just black plastic you have around these screens. It's all just a bit over bezeled. Steering wheel, I quite like the design of this, it's interesting. Quality, the leather doesn't feel quite as expensive as in the Golf, but I do prefer it than the steering wheel in the Ford Focus. Speaking of which, the interior design is more interesting, more modern than the Focus, but it feels a little bit dark, especially compared to that two-tone Golf. They've tried to liven this one up with flashes of red here and there. I'm a bit disappointed there's hard plastic on the dash. Yes, this is squidgy and that is squidgy, but there's something about the interior which just feels a little bit more flimsy than the Golf, and maybe even the Focus as well. Let's just do the quality test. So, it's a weird noise. Enough of that. That's quite nicely damped. This isn't so, shut up. This isn't so good though, look. That has like a two-stage drop down, doesn't it? Driving position, that's fine. Do you know what? I like the interior more than the Focuses, but I do prefer the Golfs. When you compare the Honda Civic's interior to the other three cars, it just seems like a bigger vehicle. I don't know whether it's the design of the dash, the way you've just got like this straight strip there like that. Just somehow seems wider, more spacious. Now let's do the quality test. So, center console wobble test. That's solid as a rock. How about the indicator? Oh, that's quite firm. I think the spring back is a little bit too abrupt. Makes it sound a bit flimsy, even though it's not. Shame. Let's move on to the glove box. Is it damped? Oh my gosh, look at that. That is so well damped. In fact, it's moving at the pace of tectonic plates. It's so slow. Come on. Come on. Come on. Getting bored now. There, that's it. Finally open. Anyway, infotainment system. The screen is nice and clear. It responds quickly as well. The layout's easy to use. Got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but you have in all the other vehicles. You've got some quick menu buttons there, and then some ones along the bottom, although they're integrated in the touchscreen. Best thing is this though, look, climate controls. So easy and clear and simple to use, which is handy when you're driving. I also quite like the digital driver's display. It's not the brightest, granted, but it's clear. It gives you all the information you need, and you can quickly scroll through all the different functions like that using these buttons here, and it's so easy to do. As for the driving position, well, do you know what? I think this is the best overall. I think they've got it nailed in this car. Do you know what? It feels like a much more grown-up interior than the Astra, which is a bit toy-like, and it's more usable than the Golfs. Who thought I'd ever say that? The Honda Civic's interior is more usable than a Volkswagen Golf's. That's supposed to be the standard setter, and while I do like the design of the Golfs, I think this is a better interior to use. The Honda is really impressive here in the back as well. So knee room is extremely good. There's a decent amount of foot space as well, and you can stretch out underneath the seat in front. The seat backs are quite reclined, so it's comfy. I find headroom okay, but it is a bit tight. People over 6 foot might find that sloping roofline a bit annoying. They're gonna have to slouch, but there is enough knee room to be able to do that. Also, you've got lots of under thigh support because the seat base is nice and big, and it's very cushioning. If you need to carry 3 people in the back at once, the car's body is quite wide, so there's a decent amount of shoulder space. The problem is that sloping roofline again, so people on the outer seats get pushed to the side, and it does slope in a bit there, so it's not the comfiest. When it comes to fitting a baby seat, I really like the fact that the ISOFIX anchor points are really easy to get to. Look at that. And because there's lots of room in the back, it's easy to fit a big bulky rear facing seat. You don't have to move the front passenger chair forward at all. Yes, this is a very nice car to travel in the back of. Oh my gosh, the back of this Astra feels way more cramped than that Honda Civic. There are 2 things that I find particularly annoying. So the seat backs are quite upright. Also, foot space is very cramped. Look, there's not much room for my feet, and you can't really slide your feet into the chair in front if it's low down like this. I mean, knee room isn't particularly bad, and headroom's better than the Honda, but just somehow feels more cramped. If you need to carry 3 in the back at once, it's wide enough, but once again, foot space is an issue if you've got like 3 pairs of feet. I was going to say 6 pairs of feet, but then forgot about the anatomy of human beings. Anyway, the ISOFIX anchor points are a bit awkward to get at. You have to unzip this bit and then stab around in there to try and locate them, which is annoying if you're moving your seat from car to car. Also, there's not quite as much space in the back here for a big bulky rear facing seat as there is in the Honda. I'd rather travel in the back of the Honda, without a doubt. Here in the back of the Golf, it's definitely better than the Astra. So knee room's about the same, headroom, that's similar. However, the seat backs don't feel quite so upright and there's a bit more foot space. Bigger than the Astra's, not as good as the Civics though. Also, the quality back here is not a patch on the old Volkswagen Golf. Like, while the design is nice, look at that. I'm sure the previous generation car, you wouldn't have had that. A little bit sloppy. When it comes to 3 in the back, it's all right. The body is very, very boxy, so everyone does have enough headroom and just about enough shoulder space, and the middle seat is sort of comfortable. As for fitting a baby seat, Isofix anchor point's very easy to get to, really, really good there, and the doors open wide enough and there's enough space to fit a bulky rear-facing seat. Better than the Astra for that, but not as good as the Honda Civic. I think a theme is emerging here. Here in the back of the Ford Focus, knee room, that's pretty good. Headroom, yeah, it's good. Not quite as good as the Golf, but decent enough. Foot space is slightly better than the Golf, and like with the Golf, you can slide your feet into the chair in front. I don't think the seat bases are quite as comfy as in the Golf, and that car's light interior just makes it seem a little bit more spacious, even though it's actually not. If you need to carry 3 in the back at once, what was that all about? It's weird. Is there a ghost in this car? Anyway. Like I was saying, if you need to carry 3 people in the back at once, it's very similar to the Golf, a bit better than the Astra. And if you're fitting a baby seat, I like the fact the Isofix anchor points are completely uncovered, so you can just slot your seat straight in, and there is enough room to fit a bulky rear-facing seat. Now, when it comes to ranking these 4 cars in terms of rear passenger space, the Vauxhall Astra is clearly the worst. The Golf and the Focus are very similar, but the Honda Civic is the clear winner. Practicality is a key selling point of a hatchback, and the Astra has a boot capacity of 422 litres, which is very large. Plus you have this false floor there, look at that, so you get no load lip, and when you fold down the rear seats, oh, go on, they lie pretty flat. You can also store the load cover underneath that false floor. I'm liking that. Moving on to the Focus, so its boot capacity is 392 litres, smaller than the Astra, and it's nowhere near as practical. Look, there is no false floor to store the load cover under. In fact, you can't even store it in the boot, it doesn't fit. And that means it's getting yeeted. Also, when you fold down the rear seats, you'll see you get an annoying ridge there like that, which is a bit of a pain when you're trying to load items to the front of the car. Moving on to the Golf, its boot capacity is slightly smaller than the Focus's at 381 litres, but it's a more usable square shape. There's less of a load lip to lift things over because you've got a false floor, which the load cover does fit underneath. And when you fold the seats down, look, a continuous floor makes it easier to load fully. That's good. Finally, we come to the Honda Civic. So its boot capacity is 410 litres. It doesn't have a false floor though, so there's a bit of a boot lip there, but you can get this special cover, which is handy if you've got muddy trainers. I don't know who's been using this car, but it's filthy inside. And when you fold down the rear seats, look, they've come up with a clever solution to make a sort of like easy step up so you can slide things to the front, even though the seats don't lie completely flat. And I particularly like this, the cleverest load cover of them all. Look at that. So compact that you can actually just remove it and take it with you to sell on eBay. I think overall this is the most practical car, followed by the Astra, followed by the Golf, and last is the Focus. The Honda Civic is powered by a 2-litre hybrid with 184 horsepower. This Golf is powered by a 1.5-litre turbo petrol with 150 horsepower. The Focus is powered by a 1-litre 3-cylinder turbo petrol with 155 horsepower. And the Astra has a 1.2-litre turbocharged petrol engine. It puts out 130 horsepower. Bigger engine than the Focus, but less power. What's going on? In fact, what is going on with the engine choices you can get with each of these cars? You see, with the Honda, it's simple. There's just that 2-litre hybrid. However, with the Golf, you can get a choice of various diesels or petrols. With the Focus, there's a choice of various diesels or petrols. With the Astra, you can have diesels, petrols, or a plug-in hybrid. It's all a bit confusing. So to help you out, I've actually compiled a list of the engine choices of each of these cars, and I've noted down which is my pick of each range. To find out what that is, click on the pop-out banner up there or follow the link in the description below. It's much easier than just listening to me rattle on about them now. Now let's see what these cars are like to drive, and I'm going to start off with the Vauxhall Astra. So I've got to say, it's very competent. It does everything to a reasonable level and doesn't seem to excel at anything. So for just driving along, I find it quite relaxing, quite comfortable. It's good over bumps, very, very smooth. It's fine. Visibility is good as well. The automatic gearbox is okay at changing gears when you're going slowly, though as you start to go faster, it's not very responsive. So there's no point in changing gears itself using the paddles. But other than that, it's hard to criticize. But it's also really hard to really find anything in particular that it excels at. Apart from one thing, it has a really tight turning circle, 10.5 meters, which is better than all the other cars on this test. It's quite impressive really, and that helps when you're just maneuvering around town. And this engine, it's pretty punchy actually at low speeds, gets you off the line quickly enough, but it is a bit gruff. And that brings you on to what this car's like when you're driving fast on the motorway and stuff like that. And you know, once again, genuinely quite relaxing. But I don't think it's quite as quiet as the car that it shares many of its parts with, and that's the Peugeot 308. If you want to see my full in-depth video review of the Peugeot 308, click on the pop-out banner up there for the link in the description below. Yes, they share engines, they share chassis, they share all sorts of stuff. It's as if there's not been as much soundproofing put in this car. As for the driving experience when you get the Astra on a twisty road, once again, it's competent, it does a decent job, but it's in no way fun. It just gets you down the road safely enough. So right from the get-go, you can feel that the Focus just feels a little bit more composed. It's got more poise, better balance. It has a sportier feel. This being an ST line version, you have lowered stiffened suspension, and as a result, it does just hold on very well through the corners. Makes it fun. This is a fun car to drive. Sensible family transport that's also fun. It's a big plus for the Focus. Yet despite that sporty suspension on this car, when I go over the bumps, it doesn't feel too bad at all. And it's not quite as soft as the Astra, but it's not uncomfortable in any way, shape or form. Another thing I like about the Focus, it's relatively quiet, like when you're just cruising on the motorway. You get a little bit of flutter from the pillars here, but other than that, yeah, really, really relaxing. What's less relaxing is the engine, so I'm going to floor it now. And it makes a sort of thrummy sound, this 3-cylinder, but it's not a bad sound actually, and it doesn't get too shouty when you rev it out. It's got good punch as well, so out of the corners, you wouldn't believe it was a 1 litre to tell you the truth. What I'm not so impressed with, the gearbox. It's automatic gearbox. It can just be a little bit jerky when you're going a bit slow and you suddenly want to pick up the pace, or you're manoeuvring. That's a touch annoying. If I was getting this Focus, I would definitely get the manual gearbox. It's just better. Oh, I just want to say a big thanks to Bristol Street Motors in Cheltenham for lending us this Ford Focus. If you're after a Ford, then why not hook them up? Tell them Matt sent you. So, I like the Focus, but do I like the Golf even more? Well, it doesn't feel quite as sporty and as much fun to drive as the Ford. It's not bad though. I mean, it goes around corners really, really well and grips and gives you loads of confidence, and it's responsive, but it just doesn't have that sharp feeling, that level of playfulness that the Focus has. But do most people who buy these kind of cars really care about that? Just motoring journalists maybe? Yeah, I think as an all-round package, this is very good. It feels more comfortable than the Focus. In terms of quietness though, I don't think there's much in it. The Focus might even be a little bit quieter at speed, but both of them very relaxing. What I do like about the Golf is just the general visibility. It's a really well put together car, and it's just so easy to see. Big back window, big front windscreen, big side windows. It's good for that. Also, I think that the engine's a bit better in this car. This 1.5 4-cylinder is smoother than the 3-cylinder in the Focus. Another thing I prefer is the automatic gearbox. It can be a bit jerky like the Focus is in town, but it's generally a bit better, and once you're moving along at a bit faster speed, it's really good at changing gear. Like if you floor it, it responds well, and just, yeah, off you go. There is one thing that you need to know about the Volkswagen Golf though, and that's that lower power models, those with less than 150 horsepower, have a less sophisticated rear suspension system. I don't think those are quite so comfy over bumps as the Ford Focus. This one does have the fully independent rear suspension, and so it feels nice and balanced and composed, even when you're cornering it and go over a bump. Yeah, it's good. But is the Civic even better? Finally then we come to the Civic, and it is the most unique of the cars to drive because of how its hybrid system works, and of course you can only get a hybrid. So a lot of the time when you're just mooching around town, it's quiet because you're just running electric power, and then the petrol engine will chime in to provide some power that goes into the battery that then drives the motor, which drives the wheels. So you hardly ever actually use the petrol motor driving the wheels. They do sometimes, but only at high speeds or when you really put your foot down. Most of the time, the petrol engine is acting as a generator for electricity for the motor and the batteries. All of it confusing, especially as it has a CVT automatic gearbox, which doesn't have gears, but somehow or other they've made it feel like it does have gears, so it like changes gear. Oh, that was the auto emergency braking there. Thought I was going to accelerate into the car that's filming me in front. I knew it was there. Do you know what? Round town, this is such a joy to drive. One thing where it's not quite so good as the other cars is the turning circle. It's a little bit longer, so it's over 11 metres. So going around that many roundabout, especially not as easy as in the Vauxhall Astra. But the pickup from this car, because of the instant response of the electric motor, is really good for just getting you away from junctions. One thing I should point out is that these pedal shifters, you see, they're not for changing gear, they're actually for increasing the amount of regen braking you get. Also, the visibility is good, huge door mirrors, and the suspension is brilliant over bumps. It's nice and comfortable. Really impressed with it. Another thing that I'm really impressed with is the way this thing goes around corners and handles on a twisty road. It's just so well balanced, so poised. It's fast, it's flowing. The Focus has slightly more responsive steering, but I prefer the actual feel of the steering in this Honda. I also prefer the balance of it. I think it's a fine handling car, and it is good fun on a twisty road. And then on a motorway, yeah, look, it picks up speed really nicely. And the noise that you get from the engine, did you hear it changing gears? Even though it's not changing gears, it's not intrusive. It's fine. It's just like, it's working hard, it's got some power. But then it settles down when you're coasting at 70, and it's a comfortable, quiet car to travel in. I think this is the best all-round car to drive. It pretty much takes all the best bits of the other cars and just amalgamates them into one package. Well, apart from that turning circle, it doesn't do so well there, but we'll let it off. So then, what's my final verdict? Well, the Vauxhall Astra is a good car, but it's not quite as good as the Ford Focus, which is lovely to drive. However, the Golf is better still. It's a really good all-rounder. It's just that its infotainment system is a bit annoying, and it's got a face only a mother could love. And that brings me on to the Honda Civic, which is the most practical car here. It's the nicest to drive, and I think it looks the best as well. It is a brilliant small family car, and that's why it wins this test. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like. Do you agree with my verdict? Let me know in the comments below. If you click on those windows there, you can watch some more videos. And if you click on that box there, you can go to carwow to see how much you can save on your next car. Thanks for watching. Nelly the elephant packed a trunk and said goodbye to the circus. Off she went with the trumpety trump, 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 trump.